This is a public meeting of the School Board of West Bend Joint School District Number 1. More than 24 hours prior to the meeting, notice of the time, place, date, and subject matter of this meeting was posted at the entrance doors of the Education Service Center and on the district website. It was also sent to the West Bend Community Memorial Library, the Daily News, WRYU, the Milwaukee Journal Sentinel, and other media sources that have requested notice of our meetings. I'm going to ask Superintendent Wimmer to please confirm this meeting was properly posted.
Yes, it was.
Great, thank you. Please rise and join us in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We recognize a quorum of our board. All 7 members are present tonight. Next on our agenda is to consider approval of the agenda, which was posted in advance. I would move to approve this agenda. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Kelly. We have a motion and second to approve the agenda. Any final discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. We have an approved agenda. We move to public participation. I do not see public participation comment cards, so we will move forward then with the next item on our agenda, which is our consent agenda. And at our last meeting, we went through a number of items that the board asked be placed on the consent agenda, so we have a hearty list of items on the consent agenda tonight. I'll read through them. First, minutes of the October 13, 2025 regular board meeting. We have no contracts, no resignations, or no retirements. Safety drill review is on the consent agenda. High school's graduation date of June 7, 2026. The 2026 stop-loss insurance agreement, a website contract, the district library plan, and we have the following recommendations: to change prerequisites for general music theory and honors music theory, to change prerequisites and alternating year offerings for technology and engineering courses, for the addition of a College 101 course, for course changes in business education entrepreneurship, and a recommendation for course changes in business education, personal finance, and lastly, a recommendation for updated resources for the culinary arts pathway. I believe I have recited through all of those. Thank you for double checking, Superintendent Wimmer. Any questions on any items on the consent agenda or any items any board member would wish to remove from the consent agenda? Hearing none, I would move to approve this consent agenda. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. We'll give that one to Melanie. Melanie, you win. Motion and second to approve the consent agenda. Any final discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. That motion carries. We'll move then to reports. And we have 2 representatives here tonight, one from EUA and one from Findorff. I believe it's Katie LaCourte and Justine Behrens, if that's correct. Excellent. And we are going to hear a design and construction update. Mr. Harder is getting the technology aspects all set. Thank you, Mr. Harder. Ladies, good evening.
Hello, everyone. It's good to see you all again. As a reminder, I'm Katie LaCourte with EUA, and I'm here with...
And I'm Justine Behrens with Findorff Construction.
We have an agenda tonight to give you an update on all of the facilities projects that are ongoing that were a part of the referendum. It's been a few months since we were in front of you all to give you an update. And so today we're here to discuss Jackson Elementary primarily, and then additionally we would like to discuss Badger Middle School and Silverbrook Elementary, and then talk about next steps. So I'm going to dive right into Jackson with a quick reminder of all of the projects that were a part of the facilities referendum projects. Obviously, we are covering Badger and Silverbrook today. McLean and Greentree are well on their way. The East and West High School will touch on in next steps, and then we're touching on Jackson today. So we've highlighted what we're outlining in this approved plan diagram. Just to cover the kind of overall schedule of these projects, Jackson has been the largest chunk of the referendum projects and therefore the largest duration throughout. It was the project we started with immediately, and it is going to be covering most of the timeline here. So on the upper left, you can see that Where we are today is we are wrapping up design, and we are going to be bidding later in the fall and beginning construction in early spring. That will get us into the fall 2027 school opening. And then Badger and Silverbrook, we're just beginning, or we're in the middle of design, excuse me. And then that project will be completed in the fall of 26. So in terms of Jackson, we are here to give you kind of a brief recap on all of the design updates that we've covered to date, since it's been about 5 months since we were here last, focusing on the interior design walkthrough. So as a reminder, and just for anyone watching online, we covered kind of the design and planning of Jackson in our April board meeting, and then in our May board meeting, we covered the exterior design. If anyone wants to have a quick recap of the kind of why behind all of the decisions that have been made, but we're gonna touch on those briefly as they've informed some of the interior design that we're gonna cover. So something that has influenced us, that serves as our North Star in making decisions for the whole project, are the guiding principles that we've established at the beginning of the design. So for this project and for all of the district projects, those guiding principles are safety and security, schools that are welcoming and accessible and adaptable and flexible for the future. And then as that applies to Jackson, we've tried to incorporate those through creating safe, centralized, and secure both indoor and outdoor spaces for students, really having a intentional and thoughtful strategy around security and access for the entire school. Creating a welcoming and accessible environment for Jackson specifically. A concept that immediately rose to the forefront was the idea of centralizing the school around the library, making it welcoming both for students and a focus for students and staff that are in the school and for community members to have access to that library. And then creating a school that's adaptable and flexible for both the present and the future. So as a part of the design and planning process, we've been thoughtful and intentional about incorporating flexible learning environments. So whether that's incorporating flexible spaces for collaboration and project-based learning, or classroom or spaces within the design that can flex as a bubble classroom. So we have 2 of those incorporated in the planning. So as your student body contracts and expands, you can leverage existing space to grow your student capacity within the walls of the existing building. And then thinking about if you were to ever grow down the line, where you might add on, so creating intentional places to add on classrooms. So that has all been baked into the design since the beginning, and it was resulted in the planning of the overall building. Just a quick reminder of the overall planning of the building, so that as we start to walk through the spaces, you know where you are. I'm just going to go over the plan high level. So as a reminder, it's a K through 5th grade school, 4 sections of K-5 and 1st grade, and then 3 sections of 2nd through 5th grade. You enter the building on the west side, so this arrow here is indicating the main entry. That's where parent drop-off occurs. And then we've created this east-west public spine that spans the 2 different entries, intentionally separating. Students are being dropped off by parents via car from buses to maximize the safety on the site and separate circulation. So on the east side is where staff and bus entry occurs, and then that public spine connects those 2 spaces. In the blue, you'll notice that's where that's primarily admin and staff spaces. So as you walk in the main entry, you go through a secure entry sequence through the main office, and then you're routed back into the main spine, where you have access immediately to the library as that centralized space within the overall floor plan, the gym, and the cafeteria as those public-facing spaces. And then we have 2 instructional wings on the left side of the plan. On the west, we have the kindergarten and first grade wing or small learning community, where those classrooms are coupled together. And then on the right side, we have the second and third grade wing on the first floor, and then I'll go up to the second floor in the second where the other instructional wing is. The plan is really built around this outdoor learning space in the courtyard that you'll see shortly. Again, to create that sense of outdoor learning that's in a safe and secure environment and connected to both the library and instructional spaces. On the second floor, as you go upstairs, on the right side is the 4th and 5th grade learning community, and then on the left side is the specials wing. Those are connected by the double height spine in the center that we'll see 3-dimensionally shortly, and then we have some special ed intervention and resource spaces at the center for broad accessibility through both levels and all grade levels. I know Jen and Tim presented some of the exterior updates last week, so I won't dwell on these too much, but this gives you a broad taste of the exterior design, which we presented back in May, and some updates that have been made since, primarily surrounded, or primarily to the courtyard area that you can see in the middle. So as a reminder, some of the inspiration for the exterior were some of the contextual buildings within Jackson, really parsing from them some of the neutral and natural materials to connect to those existing buildings, just done in a slightly newer and modern way. And then some of the glass, really focusing on some of the entry pieces to serve as a wayfinding tool and introducing some warmth with the wood materials throughout. Moving to the interior, across the district, we've tried to establish a consistent pattern throughout the whole district where possible. So maintaining continuity of some materials that could be taken advantage of in attic stock, and then creating that sense of equity throughout the district. And then just having a focus around operational maintenance and efficiency, and so using high quality, durable materials throughout the district. And then, where appropriate, looking to deviate to focus on the individual identities of each schools, primarily surrounding school colors and certain patterns that give an emphasis or create specific identities to those each individual school. So on the left, you can see the palettes that we've established so far for Jackson, Green Tree, and McLean, and then on the right is an image of the current palette for Jackson, and we'll get into the inspiration for that shortly. We presented a little bit on the kind of inspiration and concept for the interior design at Jackson at the last meeting in May, but just as a reminder, we presented a few interior concepts to staff to understand what resonated with staff that they felt was a accurate and inspirational reflection of the Jackson community. And the one that was selected by them was this nature-inspired interior that focuses on the relationship of the school to the Jackson natural areas, so Hasmer Lake, the Jackson Marsh, and Cedar Creek, and finding inspiration in those to bring into the interior of the building. How we've applied those, or how we bring those natural inspiration into the building, are through things like natural warm materials, patterns that can be inspired by nature, and then soft and curving geometry. So you can see kind of a swath of those inspiration in the imagery presented. And then we've taken some colors from those things and applied them to each of the wings of the building to then serve as a wayfinding tool. So each wing has its own color, and then in the more public-facing spaces, we've created a blend of the various colors and materials to celebrate all of the grade levels in those more public-facing spaces, and pulled in some of the school colors within those as well. We've also kind of brought in that natural feeling material as and concept as a contrast to the more linear and diagonal exterior walls by massaging the geometry of the interior to feel a little bit more soft and flowing and connected to the natural environment, to feel like a warm and accessible environment for students. And so we've done that through some of massaging some of the walls, so curves in the walls and the floor patterns, and then some of the materials as well. So I'm going to walk you into the building, and then on the right side you can see there's a small key plan with a dot that orients you to where you're standing. So it's a little small, but I'll describe where you are to kind of contextually orient you, and then describe the design intent of each of these images. So this image here is walking in the building from the main entry on the west. You've just gone through the secure entry sequence, and you're standing in the central spine that connects the east and the west, and then also connects the floor levels. So the double height space allows a visual connection from the first floor to the second floor to break down the silos of the separated floor levels. On the left, you're seeing into the library, so you can see how prominent and centralized that library feature feels within the overall building. And then on the right, you're seeing into the gymnasium. Just in front of that, right here, this glass element over here is the cafeteria, and then just in front of you, due east, is that staff entry. Some of the inspiration for the materials in here, again, was the natural waterways environment. So the gradient in colors is meant to represent kind of the soft experience of transitioning of colors that you'd experience in nature. And then the geometry is meant to feel a little bit more soft and flowing. Some of the wood elements bringing in some of that warmth. And then as we walk into the building a little further, we're now in the gymnasium, standing at the south end looking due north. This is one of the spaces where we've brought in some of the school colors. It's meant to celebrate athletics and school identity, so we're focusing on that bolder red color, but in a softer way as we're transitioning from the kind of darker gray color to the red color with the gradient of acoustical panels. And then we brought in some of the wood material on the signage as a connection to that natural material. We have in the center here, this image is showing a competition gymnasium event. So you're just seeing the one court here, but it does have the ability for the bleachers to retract. There is a divider curtain, and it could be separated for 2 courts during tournaments. And then on the right here, you're seeing into the cafeteria as the doors are open. Now we're moving from the gym into the library. So we're standing at the north end of the library. On the right here is a double height glass wall looking into the courtyard. And then on the left here, this door is your entry door to the library. This space is kind of dynamic. It has a single height space and a double height space, trying to create some micro environments within the overall environment for different zones of activity to occur. So there's a kind of classroom zone here, some stacks over here, and then some softer seating and stacks on the left side of the space. So various activities could occur simultaneously. And then the ability to walk outside and leverage that outdoor courtyard space for outdoor learning. You also can see up on the left side here, you can see up into the second floor, so there's some visibility throughout the school to be able to see into various spaces to inspire curiosity. This next image is showing the cafeteria. So we've walked back out into the main spine and are standing at the south end of the cafeteria looking just east. So on the right-hand side, you can see into the outside here. We have some tall glass at the south end of this space for the ability for teachers to supervise students as they go into recess, or that additional layer of supervision there. You're looking straight into the servery area, so we have a large roll-up garage door that contains the serving area here. And then on the left here is that glass into the main spine. Again, we are playing with the dynamic spaces in terms of having a single height space and a double height space, creating different environments within an otherwise large expansive space. This next image is looking in where we've moved up to the second floor. We're in the 4th and 5th grade learning community, so we are just through the security doors that contain the overall wing. We're looking north. We have this area here that's open is the collaboration area that students can leverage for project-based learning outside of the classroom. So on the right side, you can see this glass area here is a typical classroom that looks from the classroom to the collaboration area. So teachers can bring students out into this area and work on projects while maintaining that line of sight for supervision and security. And then the space also looks out onto the courtyard, so there's kind of this circular reference back to the courtyard, always that connection to nature, and then the prioritization of natural light throughout the project, as natural light does improve student performance. This next image is a typical classroom, so this one is showing a 2nd grade classroom. So we're standing back on the 1st floor, standing at one of the corners looking outside. The teaching wall is on the left. On the right side, you're seeing typical casework, sink within each classroom, classroom library up against the windows, and then some flexible furniture in the middle that shows that classrooms can be reconfigured in various ways for different types of learning. This image is showing we've now moved from the right-hand wing of the building to the left side of the building, where we are in the kindergarten and 1st grade wing. So we're standing at the south end looking north. In this space is configured a little bit differently than the other learning communities, as there's a desire by staff to have classrooms face each other and have this shared collaboration area, so you can see across from classroom to classroom. So to infuse a little bit more sense of the natural environment in here, since we don't have direct views of the courtyard, we brought in some wood elements and some skylights to daylight some of the centralized spaces that doesn't have access to a direct window. So it adds a little bit of northern-facing daylight to the center of the space. And then you'll see the flooring geometry kind of adds to that circular, more soft-feeling environment by creating pockets of space, so clearly defined pockets of space where students can sit and work, and then spaces where people are intended to circulate through the space. And then lastly, this is the view from the art room. So we're standing right where the pink dot is on the north end of the art room looking south. So this is the space that kind of hovers over the main entry in that double height glass space looking out. So you can see out the school flag in front of the school through the glass here. On the left is the teaching wall. The glass area is surrounded by casework. And then we have movable work tables in the center for students to work. And that covers the interior design walkthrough. What questions can I answer with respect to the design? Yep.
Can you just go back one? Sorry, could you go back one slide?
Yep.
So am I saying, are those windows into a classroom?
Yep.
Okay.
However, they also have windows in the classroom. So when she was saying
Yep.
that, so it doesn't mean they also have a wall of windows
Yep.
exterior. That's
Yep.
just in the hallway.
Yep.
I'm just thinking, how is that not distracting for a elementary school classroom to have windows where people are walking by all the time?
Yeah, so I'm going to first answer the question, the intent of the windows. So the intent of the windows is to make the spaces outside in the corridor actually useful, so that teachers can supervise students that are outside of the classroom working on a small project while staying in their classroom, so they have that line of sight. They can balance both. Otherwise, we've found that these spaces aren't useful if they cannot be supervised. So the windows are very intentional. They also minimize any the activity that typically can happen in a corridor if there's bullying or students misbehaving, that kind of idea of eyes on the street. We found that behavior actually improves by having that visibility from classroom to corridor. So it's kind of twofold for that supervision and bullying intentionality. And then we found that distraction, maybe the first week it occurs, but then students acclimate very quickly into just understanding that visibility is there.
Yep.
Also, the teaching wall is typically positioned to minimize that activity from occurring. So while there may be kind of an initial acclimation to that, it diffuses pretty quickly, and the benefits tend to outweigh any concern for distraction.
Yeah, it's just very, very different, right? Even when we look at one of our newest schools, like, we don't have that concept.
So
right?
they, actually, they proposed a lot more
Well, okay.
glass, and our teachers looked at it and said, no, too much.
Yeah,
We only
yeah.
need sight lines to see the kids in the hallway, and dialed it back.
And then just
Yep.
one more stupid question, where are the lockers?
Okay, so these are different per wing, so I'll go over this
Yep,
wing first.
okay.
So in the kindergarten and first grade wings, you can kind of see through a little bit here, the cubbies, there are cubbies for kindergarten and first grade, and they are inside the classrooms. And then in the learning communities, the fourth and fifth grade and second and third grade, they are outside of the classroom. So kind of
that's
like
what that-
yep, so this is lockers at the fourth and fifth grade level. This is most similar to Silverbrook.
Yep.
But the benefit here is that there's visibility to the lockers from the classrooms, which was a preference by staff. They had said that when we toured Silverbrook and then toured other schools, they liked the ones that had that connection and visibility to the cubbies out from the classroom. To, again, make sure that students are behaving in those environments.
That's fine, I just want to make sure that they were there.
Yes, yep.
All right.
We got
I'm
them.
good.
Other
This
questions?
This is very consistent with the discussions that we've had previously. So if members of the community are looking at this, this is still in the concept stage, so meaning, or is it, this is exactly what it's going to look like? In other words, could the furniture be different? Could the colors on the wall slightly be different? Can you just talk
Yes.
about what these are designed to represent?
Yes, yeah. So right now, we are working on construction documents, so we are nearing design completion. So the colors and materials illustrated are very close, if not almost exactly what to expect in terms of the building materials. The furniture has not been selected yet, so all the furniture represented are placeholders of what is possible. Obviously, all spaces have been right-sized to accommodate the anticipated types of furniture, but the exact furniture has not been designed or selected yet. So, and this is all obviously pending our bidding that's going to occur later this fall. So if there are adjustments needed to be made due to costs, which we are hopeful that we are on track here, but I just want to maintain that caveat, yep.
Also, some of the large graphic elements that you saw in the library, in the cafeteria, those are placeholders of where something could go, but it's not designed yet. So Katie walked through the staff with all these pieces. They had another designer with her, like, to touch all the different materials, look at all those, and then start looking at concepts to feed a designer around some of those. So those are placeholders as well.
So really, the layout is, the layout is pretty much, this is what it's gonna look like.
Yep.
But whether that exact wall is gonna be curved or straight, whether, there are still some things up for grabs.
In terms of the environmental graphics, so like, for example, in this image, this graphic that you're seeing on this tall wall here, that is a placeholder that we're refining and continuing to design. The walls are fixed at this time. It's more of just the graphic, the environmental graphics. So
Sure.
that's the flexible. Environmental graphics and furniture are the things that we're continuing to develop, but the walls are fixed at this point. Yep.
No, thank you. I just wanted to put that into context for anyone looking at it, so I
Absolutely.
appreciate that. Board members, other questions? Joe?
Just on the gym, would it be fair to say that's substantially larger than, like, say, a Decorah?
So this one is pretty much on point with the Green Tree Gym. The only thing that would be added, extended the size, is those bleachers. So if you've been to Green Tree, it's like that, and I bumped it out a little bit, and then it's got bleachers, so.
Yep.
And one more question. I think always after a building is built, we look back saying, oh, we should have had more storage space. Can you just talk generally about that? Right? Generally about that, because I didn't see any big, nor should I
Yes.
suppose, like warehouse, there's nothing like that, but that must have been incorporated. Can you walk
Yeah.
through that?
Yeah, so generally speaking, this gray block over here is kind of what we've deemed back of house type spaces. So we have a large area here that's dedicated towards receiving and building storage. We have two other large storage areas here. One's to serve the cafeteria and any furniture fold-up that needs to occur, so you can change out the furniture there. And then a large storage area here off of the back of house. So that's general kind of broad building storage. Then within each wing of the building or suite of the building, we have additional supplementary storage. So each learning community area has its own workroom and associated storage space that's intended to be seasonal storage. So each classroom has casework to have storage for their individual classroom, and then they have a storage area for their set of classrooms to have, larger elements that they're going to use every so often. Then we have additional storage within the office areas, a couple storage rooms here, and then another one here. So we have kind of smaller storage sprinkled kind of throughout in a more distributed approach to access the various spaces that storage is needed for.
I guess the last question, I know Superintendent Wimmer, we had, thank you to the Village of Jackson. We received some approvals, but I know one of the things that they were very interested in was, as it relates to drop-off, we talked about this at other meetings, I think, but how much space is available. Can someone put in perspective what we have today and what we will have as it relates to drop-off?
So we have nothing today, so
Okay.
that's pretty easy. The village allows us use of a parking lot, that is not ours. And then in the back, we might circulate traffic. They've been working on kind of a drop-off pattern off-street, new this year. So otherwise, they used to drop right at that front street in Jackson and kind of go into that staircase down. So they've been doing a circulation pattern, but it's on top of the playground in those pieces. So really a couple handicap spots embedded a little bit down the road there, maybe like 4 stalls, that kind of thing. So I'll let Katie talk through that's the most thrilling part for parents when they look at it and think about how they're going to come through that circle for drop-off.
Yep, so I don't have a site plan available, but I can describe it based on this plan here that has parts of the site plan on it. So at the main entry here, off of Jackson Drive, we have a 2-lane drop-off that accommodates 60 cars from the end at the south all the way to the north. So that accommodates 60 cars stopped in one of the lanes. The other lane is for passing. So in theory, you will get through those 60 cars very quickly because you have a parking and a passing lane. So that is for drop-off. We also have a visitor parking lot that accommodates 28 spaces just immediately west of the drop-off lane. We have an entirely different drop-off lane on the east side of the site that accommodates 3 buses. And then also is the lane used for staff to access their parking lot. We have a sidewalk that circulates around the drop-off lane so that students will never interfere with vehicular drop-off. And then we have a overflow parking lot to the south of the cafeteria, which actually can extend the drop-off lane to additional cars. So if pickup becomes too, even with this significantly improved drop-off scenario, if you need additional queuing space, the overflow parking lot can serve to extend the drop-off lane further, but it also accommodates an additional 90 cars if you have a large event in the cafeteria or gym. So that asphalt is dual purpose, essentially.
Great, thank you. Sounds like a big improvement, and a lot of thought went into it. Board members, other questions?
Okay,
All right, continue on, please.
all right. All right, so now we're going to move to the budget and schedule, and I'm going to let Justine take over.
Thanks, Katie. So a quick reminder of where we are at. We're just talking about the Jackson Elementary budget right now. At the previous meeting, we only had budgets through the schematic design process, which was far less detailed than the plans we have now. So right now, the latest complete plan set we've received from EUA, we like to call design development. This is a plan set that has floor plans, it has exterior plans, and gives a little bit more detail for materials, so we can get a more accurate budget than we could when we just had concepts and general layouts of the building. What this budget is not based on are the final drawings that EOA is working on right now. So this has a little bit of market feedback inputted into it, but it is not final by any means. We're just using really good historical data to inform our budgets. So right now, the pre-referendum budget for Jackson was at $48 million. At our last update, it was said that the Jackson Fund was also to be used for the construction project. So we're going to roll in that extra $1.47 million into the Jackson budget. And at our last budget update a month or two ago, we came in right on budget, $49.47 million. So things are tracking really well. The project will be bidding out in late fall, early winter of this year, generally December, with final numbers to be presented in early 2026 to the district. Construction is still planned to start this spring and continue through the summer of 2027, with school opening for fall of 2027. Are there any questions about budget or schedule for Jackson?
Questions?
Thank you. Gonna turn it back over to Katie real quick.
Just one more update with respect to the budget that I wanted to mention. The primary use of the Jackson Fund were those 2 additional classrooms that we added that we talked back in April about when we presented that additional scope and what was being identified for those dollars. All right, so moving on to Silverbrook and Badger. So as a reminder, the general scope of work at Silverbrook and Badger, although there are newer schools with respect to the overall district fleet of buildings within the district, there's some work that needs to be associated with these 2 projects related to their reconfiguration. So looking back at the long-range plan developed pre-referendum, as a reminder, Badger currently is an intermediate school serving 5th through 6th grade, and it's going to be converted into a K through 5th grade. And so the work at Silverbrook is associated with that reconfiguration. Similarly, at Badger, there's some reconfiguration in terms of adding 1 grade level, adding 6th grade to Badger, and then some capital maintenance and projects that were remaining from the former referendum associated with that project. So I'll go into detail for those 2 projects. So first, the transition of Silverbrook Intermediate to Silverbrook Elementary School primarily involves 3 pieces within that project. The first is converting a series of classrooms from traditional classrooms that are serving 5th through 6th grade into a kindergarten suite. And what that involves is creating en-suite bathrooms and a little bit larger classrooms for kindergarten. Additionally, some space dedicated to special education programming. Within the constraints of within the extents of an intermediate school, we have additional music space that we don't need fully for the purposes of an elementary school. We still need music space, but not as much that is provided at the intermediate level. So we could leverage some of that additional space for special ed programming. And then lastly, the loading dock needed some replacement. So just diving a little bit further into the details of this, what exactly does that mean from a design standpoint? The kindergarten suite was identified. The best space for this suite is closest to the entry for our littlest learners to have best access to those classrooms and not have to travel so far. So we selected this suite of classrooms you can see within the key plan on the lower right. So formerly, this was a set of 6 classrooms that has been converted now into 5 classrooms and integrated some en-suite toilet rooms. So you can see the light gray is existing walls, and then the darker black are new walls, and then the red dash is where walls are being removed. So you can see that this was formerly 6 classrooms, and basically these 3 middle classrooms are being converted into 2 larger classrooms with ensuite bathrooms. We're also integrating what we're calling a super toilet, which just means a larger toilet room that has some changing space and a lift space for a lift for any students that need assistance with using the restroom, and then a space for interventionists within this suite of spaces. And then the second piece being transitioning the existing orchestra room into a special education suite. So you can see some general multi-purpose special ed classrooms, some common spaces, some toilet rooms, and sensory spaces to take advantage of that additional square footage. And then the last piece being the loading dock. Are there any questions on Silverbrook prior to moving on to Badger?
So how was there 5 kindergarten classrooms? Can you go back to that?
Oh, sorry, 7 to 6. I
There you go,
misspoke
okay.
here. There we go. Yes, we went from 6.
I just thought I was crazy. I was trying to, I kept counting.
Sorry.
You are correct. It was
Okay.
7
To
down to
6.
6, and the 2 teams from Decorah and Fair Park that teach kindergarten were actually pulled in to work with Tim and the designer to look at what new spaces at Green Tree look like when they were attended to, other concepts, those pieces, and they've informed this design.
So my question then is this more kindergarten classrooms than we would normally have? Because I think like Decorah with 3, right? Or are these smaller classrooms to accommodate less kids per class?
It's in Silverbrook Elementary School is a larger elementary school
Okay.
than the
So
other
it's
schools.
meant to take
It's
on-
meant to take on this quantity of sections.
Okay.
Yep.
Great. Other questions? Go ahead.
All right. All right, and then last but not least, at Badger, there's a small scope of work here associated with the prior referendum work. So those are related to some locker room renovations, music department door improvements, gym floor striping and bleachers, and then fire alarm throughout the school. So this is an example, this enlarged plan here you can see is keyed to the overall plan in the lower right corner, a reconfiguration of the locker rooms to meet ADA accessibility, and then we've taken advantage of some additional space that was underutilized and are using it for intervention purposes. So those are these 3 rooms right here. And then the rest of the work, we don't have visually represented. It's, again, related to some of that capital maintenance work. Any questions on the scope at Badger? All right.
As a reminder, the pre-referendum budgets for Silverbrook Middle School was $4.09 million, and for Badger was $3.26 million. We haven't had a chance to check the budget since the pre-referendum estimates, but we are expecting to have some feedback later this fall. The schedule for these projects is bidding out the work with construction documents early 2026, with work to commence summer of 2026 and wrap up in the fall of that first 2026 school year semester. Any questions about Badger or Silverbrook budgets or schedule?
So it sounds like the budget, we're tuning it up a bit, but there's nothing overt to suggest that it's in jeopardy at this point.
That is correct.
Okay. Joel?
So will work be continuing into the school year next year at those buildings?
Yes, we are anticipating some work to continue into the school year, much like McLean and Green Tree, but it will be managed to be to cause as little disruption as possible.
Okay.
And the budget check is just a result of the schedule. EUA has issued drawings to Findorf, and they're currently undergoing the budgeting process. So that will be unveiled to you in our next steps, which brings me to the next steps for all projects. As we discussed, Silverbrook and Badgick will have pending budget updates come later this fall. You also will see a similar presentation that has more of the interior design of those spaces. So you'll see a more three-dimensional visualization of what those spaces will look like. That's forthcoming. Jackson, as mentioned, will be bidding at late November, early December. So you will get a final cost update on that. And then the high school, we are undergoing programming and concept design now, and we'll be unveiling a early design presentation for you in the next coming months once that process gets a little further along.
Thank you. We appreciate the update. Board members, any additional questions? It sounds like more information to come.
Yeah.
All right.
All right.
Great. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Thank you. All right. Our next report is the superintendent's report. Superintendent Wimmer.
Yes, thank you to our partners, EUA and Findorf. I know in working with the Jackson staff and kind of, it's bigger than just remodeling to start thinking from the ground up. And a lot of, we were just out in fall to dig in and look at different interior finishes, materials, et cetera. And people were remarking, Darcy conveyed that the staff were really pleased after their walkthrough around how much of their feedback and design showed up in the end result. So thank you for that. And thank you to that staff for contributing. I would like to lead with some congratulations for our Head Start staff, including their early learning administrator, Jamie Malsum, and Melanie Ergot, who sits on their board as well. They earned the prestigious National Head Start Association's Program of Excellence accreditation. So for perspective, only 11 Head Start programs of the 1,600 in the country received this accreditation. So the program was recognized for consistently demonstrating extraordinary excellence and outstanding work in early childhood development. And our program is one of only 4 in the state that is run by a public school district. And we serve all of Washington County with that. So we will bring that team forward for formal recognition by the board at a future date. But I just wanted to share that congratulations. Speaking of Head Start and early learning, at our most recent PD Day, Tim, along with all of those teams, toured McLean and Green Tree. Recall that Green Tree will be the future home of Head Start. McLean will be the future home of early learning. We accelerated the timeline of McLean and Green Tree and that construction. Tim led a tour just last week with them to look at and see that those things are being finalized. Their schools would be ready to receive them in fall. So we got a lot of selfies from those teams with a thumbs up saying, move us over the summer, we're ready to go. So we'd like to accelerate that move. It actually would be beneficial because we're gonna be up to our eyeballs the summer after with some of the high school in Jackson. So this, when you see the scope of kind of what's going on this summer, is much smaller at Badger and Silverbrook than what we had to undertake last year. So moving them and having that attention makes sense to us. So we'll formalize moving forward on that timeline unless there's any objections. And that then we'll put on the docket a little bit sooner for us to examine what to do with that building because then Ralph's would be empty. So I'll schedule that in accordingly for the board to review that potential for that building. I'd also like to recognize fall athletics. So just a congratulations to all the students, the coaches for their hard work, their accomplishments this fall. The East Boys Soccer were the 14th seed, beat Slinger, the number 3 seed last week. They did eventually lose to Homestead, but they had a strong performance this season. The Spartans football team made their first trip to the playoffs in 15 years. That's another program that's made some positive strides. They were eventually beaten by Slingers, so those seasons are coming to a close. However, we have 2 teams still in competition. So congratulations to the West Boys cross country team for qualifying for the state championships. as a team. They will compete this coming Saturday at Wisconsin Rapids, so good luck to that team. And then the West boys soccer team, the number 1 seed in its sectional, has already won its regional. They will play Kaukauna this Thursday evening right here at home field, so please come and cheer them on. If they win, they play the sectional final to go to the state tournament on Saturday in Cedarburg. So good luck to those teams still competing. In the consent agenda, you had the item around confirming the high school graduation date for East and West High Schools of Sunday, June 7th. As I explained, this will change kind of the end-of-year schedule for our seniors while still meeting required instructional minutes. So our high school families with seniors should look for communication that's going to come directly from their principal, Jen Potter, who's with us for another item this evening. So look for that soon. So they were waiting to formalize, and they'll move forward on that. So it was a change that I think students and families were really looking forward to. So thank you for that. And I wanted to alert our community that our Student Services Department is working to identify opportunities for strengthening and refining school counseling services. So they're hosting a series of virtual and in-person focus groups in November and December. So professional facilitators will come in and work with different focus groups. They'll be asking students and family members to go check that out on our district website to see what might work in their schedule to RSVP. We'll also launch a survey, and again, it's just kind of what have been students and family experiences with the school counseling model, so they can kind of take that feedback and continue to grow. So thank you to our student services team for doing that. And then we had done some updates to the 800 series of policies, but we held 830 around facilities. We were doing a lot of work. We went back to the table, created an expanded kind of bucket that would increase some access at lower or no cost for our team. So we kind of have all that figured out. We've put together some tailored communication that would go to all facility users. We'll launch that this week and tell them kind of what that looks like, what would that impact be, and gather their feedback prior to bringing that back before the board. So I just wanted you to know that status of where that was at. We had incorporated all that feedback, have that, and then we'll tailor it to different user groups so that they can see and understand a little bit more thoroughly, and then we'll bring that feedback before the board reviews. Any questions on that one?
Joe?
Yeah, so that facilities policy, we'll be approving that before the end of the year, I assume?
Yeah, so it takes 2 to 3 readings for you to do that, so you certainly have time with our slate. But again, all the savings that we incurred for groups, we passed that, so that took effect in July. So then our fiscal year runs in July, so we wouldn't recommend a mid-year switch in financing to people in a January. If it were gonna be an imposed new cost, we would actually recommend to do that on our fiscal year in July as well.
Okay, I thought we were heading toward a
Yep.
January 1.
Yeah, you can adopt that, but we can choose when we put in, if there's gonna be increased fees. I think the board has shown that you want a lot of, kind of lead time for different groups on impact. Again, we did not, anyone who's gonna be, receiving a savings, the board can choose to impose fees or do whatever structure they would like once they go through all those readings in that. But we are fine with that consistent recommendation to hold that, so groups would plan if there was an impact.
But jumping off what Joe said, would that 4th tier provide additional savings to some groups?
Correct, yes.
So by that argument, if we want to try to help those kind of organizations, then maybe we would want to adopt it sooner than later.
Yeah, we would probably do much like we did, parse it out. If there's
Yep.
savings to be had, go for it. If
Okay.
there's a cost to be accounted for, we would split that recommendation. And you can do that in stages.
Okay.
And that concludes my report.
Any questions for Superintendent Wimmer? All right, thank you for your report. Let's see, we have a few discussion items tonight. Well, one discussion item, I believe, and then an action item. On the discussion, high school configuration, academics, and co-curricular opportunities. Superintendent Wimmer is taking the podium.
So recall, we kind of are splitting up our work around high school's configuration into some phases. We're in a learning phase, like tell me some high-level information so we know how and when we might want to go deeper. So I'm joined tonight by our executive principal, Jen Potter, with us. So we worked on, I kind of picked the easiest ones to lead with, which are the academic program and the co-curriculars, because they're largely already blended. So we'll walk through some pieces, stop us at any point to ask us questions, and we can field those or get you more information. Okay, so what was interesting, and here I have it. So we are unique in having 2 high schools on one campus. And I think they actually designed it where you could add modular buildings, you could add a north, you could add a south, you could add all sorts of things. And the very first rosters of kids were a coin flip. And then they went off the alphabetical list based off a coin toss and just assigned you to one or the other going down a joined alphabetized list. I don't have the exact date where we switched into our current configuration of East and West, but you can see some things. Some photos of the building when it was constructed and our entries now. So the current school assignment, just for perspective, is around your birthday, which, like I said, anytime I'm at a conference and when you need unique facts about your district, I win solidly, hands down. And if I can't get them with this, I get them with the fact that I have a synchronized swim team. So I'm good on that. So you are scheduled by your birth date. Your oldest in your family kind of sets that bar, and the others follow. However, when kind of school choice became a thing, then we put in, so it predates me, in 8th grade, families have an opportunity to select. You get a letter that says, you're slated for this school, what would you like? They declare that and sign off. There's all sorts of rules around transfers when it gets to athletics and WIA and those pieces. So we give them that opportunity so they come into their new school cleanly. Right now we have 815 students enrolled at East and just a little over 1,000 students at West. So that's how they're separated. So generally, if you're in a community with multiple high schools, you have some type of feeder pattern. These couple elementaries go to this middle, go to this high school, or these 2 elementaries come into this middle, then they go on and kind of parse back out. So it really depends. So having kind of this born on date is pretty unique for us. And then it means going down the street, your neighbor can go to a different high school. Again, you're getting on the bus and going to the same school. So that kind of gets us to 2 high schools under one roof. Any question on assignment? So again, how you're assigned doesn't really matter because your academic program is the same. The course guide is the same. Your access to courses is the same. All of those pieces are the same, including your advanced placement, some of your alternative education programs. Jill Corbett has reported to the board on those. Those are all accessible to all our students. Library and Media Center was condensed down to one facility, and then all of our access to our virtual program. So that all goes under one umbrella. Jen, do you want to speak to kind of how you schedule those kids? Because you put them apart and then push them together in certain ways. I don't know if you want to speak to.
Well, it's all done at the same time. So students for just our general courses.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we usually open our assignments for students anywhere between end of November to end of January. So within there, we're actually looking to move it up a little bit this year so we can get classes out to kids, get our course planning guide out to kids so that they can see their options, make and declare their classes for next year. And then we really go on who signed up for what. So we don't balance it out by East and West. We do balance it out, try to, by gender, by ratios, by numbers. So
you can have classes, especially in that core area, so they'll make a first pass at scheduling where kids are separated by East and West. So you'll see that especially if we're all taking freshman English, You might have some East-only classes, some West-only classes, but then again, the efficiency of having the two under one roof, when I come up against a low class size or a unique program like autos or the culinary arts program, et cetera, they're commingled. So you may or may not be alongside East and West in your classrooms as you are in the hallways.
So every opportunity for every student.
And at least the way that I understood it too, is that in the beginning, so take freshman math. Might be all East, might be all West, might be a mix, but when we get to advanced calculus, probably almost guaranteed it's a mixture. Is that generally true, the higher? Okay. Thank you. Appreciate that.
So one of the pieces is around academic recognition. You have a couple policies that guide you on recognition. So there is one specifically around valedictorian and salutatorians, and we do not limit those to singular students. Yes, I have a set for West and East, but they are not singular. So they're looking at all the grade points, they're looking at all the eligibility criteria, and they're declaring multiples. So I think you've got a little bit of history on that piece,
Sure.
if you want to share.
So we usually average over the course of the past few years between 8 to 10 valedictorians. So I believe that West had 6 last year and East had 4. So we really do just look at the students who meet the criteria. So looking forward, that wouldn't change at all. The salutatorian, same thing. So it's based on the criteria. We have had years where we've had 2 from a school. We have had years where we've had 1 that meets the criteria.
So again, if you're looking at 2, you have a pool of 800 and 1,000 where you're rising to the top of your grade points. Their grade points are pretty consistent with each other, who the top is. Again, there's no cap. If you commingled, you'd be putting together and standardizing around 1,500 students in your school. So you would still have the top of your class, but there's still opportunity for multiples there. We don't have singular on any.
So if we looked at the graduating body last year and we said, well, there were some salutatorians here and valedictorians, if they were combined, the same kids would have been designated as valedictorian, salutatorian, would that be true?
Yep. We would have had 10 students instead of 6 and 4 that met the criteria.
Because all based on criteria.
Correct.
Okay?
So another piece is around awards, scholarships. There is one that is, well, 2 that are driven by the state and confirm with them. So that is not by, it's more driven by enrollment. So it's in batches of 500 students. So right now, our allocation is 2 per school because of the different sizes. If they were put together, you would get 4. 4 opportunities. Now, as enrollment declines, so in the next 4 years, you're looking at a drop of, roughly 400 students. You're looking at stabilizing at about 1,500 students. You're just shy of 2,000 now, and you're looking at 1,500. So you could, in those years, be looking at a reduction, which you would have for enrollment anyway. Any questions on some of those? The other are external scholarships. There's a couple internal from our high school through student council, and there's quite a few organizations. Our community is really generous with supporting our graduating seniors of both East and West High School. So you have different buckets of scholarship, right? Corporate community, you have Columns, which is a unique organization to West Bend, and that is where a lot of organizations kind of commingle their funds. It's overseen by a board. The team comes in and does interviews on site, and there's a link there to its scholarship guide. So each year they award both academic and technical scholarships. However, the number of scholarships, the amounts, the breakdown of East and West students is different each year. It's not represented technically in that chart below. So that's what was given in the years prior. Their book is not updated. Those launch in fall to see what those things are. When you look at some things that are sitting kind of by school, it might be a specific alumni. So as a graduate of East, I'm giving back in this piece. So whether or not that alumni would then switch that over holistically, I can't know that. But the other scholarships that Columns administers are categorized as academic, and they're awarded to students pursuing four-year or university degrees. They're technical awards as well for any vocational or technical college. So there's 61 different designated as academic, 19 technical, 61 as either in those. But you can see kind of where they're falling. So it depends on the organization. Kind of who's giving what, but that is a piece, and those change annually.
So those rules, so for instance, and first of all, again, we are very appreciative of Columns and the work they do and the support for all of our students. But that is a different organization, and so those
Correct.
are rules they have. So in theory, if we were to combine schools, we may need to consult with those organizations to say, if you've got an only East or an only West, we got to talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, we would talk with both the organization as well as the donor. So under that umbrella, there might be a singular person, which, who is giving, we're giving to East, we're giving to this, would they consider, if that were to change, so. And it's mostly alumni kind of association. Any questions on that potential impact? So that brings us from academics to the co-curricular program. That is also already blended. That's their co-curricular guide. Mackenzie is with us. She's our brand new athletic director at East, but she also oversees all the co-curricular pieces. So the programs have kind of three buckets. You have your co-curriculars, you have school-sponsored clubs, and you have school-recognized clubs. So there's a variety. We've given you some examples. You can also take a look at that guide. However, with the exception of the National Honor Society, these are all commingled. National Honor Society is recognized by school. If that were one school, nothing in eligibility changes. You meet that criteria, you're inducted to the school's National Honor Society. There is no limit on that piece. So there is in some of the things that Student Council, they're a student organization, they do things that would have kind of consequences around kind of consolidation. Homecoming, charity, and prom are three dances that have separate courts right now. Other than that, all of your co-curriculars are commingled. Any questions on those pieces? And really, that is your overview of academics and co-curriculars. I led with the very easy ones that are pretty consolidated. Next month will be athletics. So, and it's singular in topic. But again, this is kind of easy to show that we've been utilizing the model, whether it's 1, 2, 6, however many schools I had named, these things are all blended. We did get some fun facts around, and we were digging in archives around, and like in anticipation, if you quizzed us, I would tell you that Student Council was combined in 2012, in 2013. Chad, did you serve in a singular council, or, because you were in Student Council back in your day? Oh, are we showing how old you are? So that's already combined. Your band, all of those, you had the director of bands, Corey Murphy, come in when they were launching their Fuel the Music campaign. Those are all combined. Those have been combined. I learned from Ralph Schloss in 1986, his freshman year. When in doubt, ask Ralph Schloss, who's been in the district since he was 5. And he can name those things for you. So again, very high-level overview. These are all commingled to kind of create opportunities, leverage the numbers of students we have, a little bit less around kind of what name they're sitting under.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation. Thank you. And look forward to more. Have a good night. Thank you. All right, that concludes our discussion items. We move to action item. Then our action item tonight, final budget recommendation and certification of tax levy. And Lenny Hansen, our assistant superintendent, is going to walk us through this item. And we had a little bit of a preview last time. Mr. Hansen.
Thank you very much. Tonight is the culmination of many months of work. We've talked about the items that I'm going to discuss at many meetings, including the previous meeting. So I'm going to go relatively quickly and then open it up for questions. But we have arrived at the day where we finally approve what is called the final or original budget. which then leads to our tax levy certification, which goes out to our municipalities. So last time I was here, I said that there were a few key final data points that we were waiting on, so I'm going to really briefly review those and where they ended up and how they impact our final budget. So membership, we talked about, is a count of all students in the district attending a school funded by public dollars. The membership for this year ended up at just over $5,500, or students, sorry. Our dollars, the money we receive, is based on a 3-year rolling average. Our current 3-year rolling average is 5,684 students. That then determines our per pupil amount that we receive. Property value was another key data point that we were waiting on. It came in very close to where we were predicting. So property value rose about 9.1% across our entire district. As we talked about last time, that varies depending on which municipality you live in. This is a chart that's been updated that you saw at our annual meeting about how property values have grown over the last several years. We've had strong property value growth consistently, regardless of the market, for a decade. State aid was an item that we talked a lot about. So last year's state aid was almost $33 million. An estimate was put out on July 1st for every school district that showed we would lose about $1.8 million in aid. Between July 1st and October 15th, then, the state collects more data from different districts around their expenditures from the prior year and then puts out the final aid amount. It dropped another almost $500,000 as a result of that update. The West Bend School District was impacted in a way that most school districts across the state were. A few school districts seem to get a large aid increase, but that is a fixed pool of money, so that increase is at the expense of everyone else, which is why, as you see there, 71% of school districts lost aid compared to last year. Our district's aid went down 7%. Only one district within our county actually increased in aid this year. That then, that balance between state aid and property taxes then is what we look at next, because if we receive less state aid, we have to look at the property tax levy for how that revenue would be collected. The state funding formula basically says that school districts would pull their per pupil amount from one of those two buckets. This is a history of state equalization aid. There was a lot of information about this at the annual meeting, talking about the history of, even though the state has put more money into that pot, the way the state funding formula works, the West Bend School District and some other school districts have not necessarily benefited directly from that. A lot of that is due to that property value growth, and we've talked about that previously. Special education reimbursement is another key element that you've heard throughout the budget discussions since the spring. So this is a partial reimbursement of our Fund 27 or special education expenses that the state provides. It provides actually not just special education service reimbursement, but also things, expenses related to things like nurses, psychologists, counselors, and so forth. This is a major source of revenue for school districts, so what the state decides to put into that pool is very important for us to consider. So the last 2 years, the state promise in the state budget was that it would reimburse 1/3 of costs for special education. As has been the case pretty consistently, the state failed to make good on that promise fully, and that reimbursement actually ended up being just about 30.6%, which may not seem like a large difference, but it actually, as you can see, results in a difference of $357,000 that the district did not receive versus what the state had indicated it would when it passed the budget a couple of years ago. So this year, the state has promised a big increase, 42%. However, already, that budget was passed July 4th, already DPI is saying, oh boy, we're looking at the data, yeah, we're not gonna make 42%. So we're currently projecting that shortfall to be pretty similar to what it was last year. We will be continuing to watch that month by month from DPI because we won't know that final amount until June. So we really have to watch for those insights and hints that they give along the way. And then likely that shortfall will be even larger next year from the state. So this is updated from the annual meeting, but again, that chart of what the size of that shortfall to fund special education from the state has been. So you'll hear a lot of talk about, oh, the state made a monumental investment in special education funds, and certainly there was an increase, but as you can see, that really only returns us to the funding level we had a couple of years ago. It's not that you see any kind of dramatic shift in philosophy around special education funding from that state budget. So then all of those factors together come together to form our levy, which then translates to a mill rate. As we said before, the mill rate will remain flat at $6.14. We don't know the state average mill rate yet because everybody is doing exactly what we're doing right now and setting them. But if we want to compare to what the average across the state was last year for K-12 districts, it was $7.09. So we're quite a bit, obviously, below what that state average is for a mill rate. As I talked a lot about at the last meeting, that $6.14 is an average across the district. So depending on which municipality you live in, your mill rate could be different above or below that. And I refer people to the last meeting for a more in-depth explanation of how that all works. So here is our historical mill rate. As you can see, we are well below what it had long time been, and it really hovered around that $8 mark for quite a while. So even with levying for our referendum projects that you heard about earlier and all of our other services, we're still well below where we've historically been. I'm going to go very quick over this topic, but it is a review from last time because it's the question that I have and will get the most following the levy approval and once tax bills come out. And that common question is, does a flat mill rate mean my property tax bill will not change? And I'm going to go quickly, and please refer to the last meeting if you want to learn more about it. But the short answer is no. Your individual property tax bill can go up or down even if the mill rate stays flat. And there's several factors that impact that. They're listed here. The change in your property value, your municipality's total value. It's especially important how your municipality's property value changes in relation to the other ones within the district. So how, if you live in the city of West Bend, how that change in property value relates to the change in property value, say, in the village of Jackson or the town of Trenton. That's really important as well. There's other factors that we talked about that can impact that property value, like addition or construction, change in the condition of your property, or a reassessment. So there's a whole lot of variables that go into that. So that's why the short answer is no, you can't just assume that a flat mill rate means your property taxes don't change. They could go down or go up, depending on those variety of factors. So as we wrap things up, those key budget highlights remain the same from the last several meetings. That mill rate will remain flat at $6.14. This is a balanced general fund or Fund 10 budget that's proposed, and our fund balance will remain healthy. I'm ready for any questions about the budget or the levy. Otherwise, then, we would motion to approve both that budget and the levies so that we can move forward and fund all the great programs that you've been hearing about at the podium tonight.
So, Mr. Anderson, with the state special ed aid shortfall, this is something that's across districts. In other words, they're not saying, well, West Bend, we don't like you, so you don't get fully paid, but school district X gets all of it. This is a uniform. I'm not saying it's good or bad, but just to understand, we're not being singled out.
Correct. It's actually really similar to that state aid process where there's just a fixed pool of money and then they divide it up based on how much was submitted, right? So they'll look at, okay, we think this amount of $500 million will equate to a 42% reimbursement. But then when everyone submits their reimbursement info or all their expense info from the prior year, they realize, ooh, people spent more on special education services than we thought they would, so it's actually not going to be 42% with that $500 million. I'm throwing an arbitrary number out there. It's actually only going to hit 40% or 38%. So really the same way that that fixed pool of money works for state equalization aid.
Yeah, got it. Thank you. Other questions? Joe?
Yeah, so I think everything you said about the revenue side of things makes sense to me. I don't know if I would say I agree with it, but, so our revenue limit is going up, but our state aid is going down, so then more has to come out of property taxes. Property values are increasing, so we can keep the mill rate flat, and I understand it's more complex than that. But in looking at the expense side of things, I was reviewing the numbers and kind of comparing to the budget presented back in June, I believe it was, and from then to now, both from then to now and over the last couple of years, there's been a pretty significant increase in the purchase services line. It was like 1.8 million higher for the budget year we're in from June to now, and it's gone up by over 4 million over the last couple of years. Could you just speak to what's going on
Sure.
with that line?
I'll first kind of point out a couple of things because the timing of when that preliminary budget comes out really matters in answering your question. So we do that preliminary budget, we did that back in June, before the start of the fiscal year. And then we talked about how a lot of that is based on information we don't know, and especially on this year because the state budget hadn't been passed yet. So the preliminary budget is based a lot on forecasting and basically predicting that the state budget would behave similarly to how it had in prior years, right? So we look at those historical trends and different things that they include there. The state budget then is approved after, and purchase services, when you look there, is actually a really wide bucket of things. So, you know, when you think of purchase services, you might first think, oh, we're purchasing a software service or this occupational therapy service or something like that, right? And that is included. But a couple of things that they also include in that purchase service bucket would be open enrollment and voucher costs. So the district and all school districts, the way the state set it up is that the school district acts as a pass-through to fund those programs. And it really isn't that the number of students participating in those programs has gone dramatically up. There have been small increases from year to year. It's really that the state has increased the per pupil amount that flows through there quite substantially over the last several years for things like open enrollment and vouchers. So, like for example, the average increase in open enrollment per pupil the last 4 or 5 years was maybe $200 go up per kid. And this year's budget, kind of without warning, they surprised everybody and it went up $1,100, right? So that looks in your budget like a purchase service, but really you're operating as a pass-through as we get the revenues over to open enrollment. Same with vouchers. Actually, that's a question I get a lot, and I actually had something I kind of wrote up because I get that question quite a bit to explain how that works because it's a somewhat similar phenomenon. So the state has set up the voucher program in a manner that asks the school district to operate as a pass-through agency, right? So we collect the property tax dollars that fund the voucher program, and then we in turn send those over to the voucher schools through a transfer process. So voucher schools are funded entirely by local property taxes. So the state doesn't allocate any money to that program. So West Bend is by far the largest city in Washington County or Ozaukee County. And this results in our community being very fortunate that we have a lot of large and vibrant faith communities. And as a result of having so many large faith communities, there's naturally been a much greater concentration of private schools here in our community compared to the rest of those counties for just simply our size. So large churches, for example, like those found in West Bend, are much better positioned to support schools, which explains why we happen to have so many private schools within our boundaries. And additionally, the only 2 private high schools in either county are actually in Jackson. That's Living Word and Kettle Moraine Lutheran. So that high concentration of private schools within our boundaries, that's been the case for many decades, actually. So what that means is that our residents, have that tax obligation passed on to them much more than maybe some neighboring communities because we just have that prevalence here. So, like for example, the voucher impact on the mill rate last year here in West Bend was 70 cents, whereas in one district adjacent to us that's much smaller and doesn't have hardly any voucher schools, it was like 8 cents, right? But that all appears on one tax bill under your just school tax levy, right? So this approach by the state to kind of have us operate as a pass-through, unfortunately, can create confusion for our taxpayers because they might believe that all of that amount that they see on their tax bill is going to the public school, when in fact, this year, for example, about 1 in every $8 that's collected for the schools will be routed through to the voucher program for our private schools to do the great work that they do as well. So I think that's really important. I mean, that amounts this year to a levy of around $6.7 million that we're operating as that voucher pass-through. So when you're looking at the increase in that purchase service line, you're really understanding like, wow, that's not a small amount of money that we're operating as that pass-through for. So And this year, the voucher amount also increased per pupil quite substantially. And again, there's no predicting of how the state does that, just put it in the budget, and then we operate as that pass-through. But over the last several years, that per pupil amount for voucher schools has accelerated quite a bit more than, say, the public school amount. So I think the last 4 or 5 years, that amount has increased for the voucher per pupil amount about 48% total over that time period, whereas the public school revenue limit per pupil has increased about 15%, right? So when you're increasing it at that rate, that's going to increase the amount of that levy, which is also going to increase the amount that flows through those purchase services line in your budget. So long explanation, but it is kind of complicated how it works. Listen, our public schools do great work. We have some great private school partners who also do great work. We are simply operating as a funding pass-through, right? But the way it's laid out on your tax bill doesn't make that real clear, so we try to explain it whenever we get asked.
So just to make sure my math on that is right, it's almost 13% of our budget that goes to voucher program? Or 13% of the
Yeah, I think it's like
levy? Sorry.
12.6, 12.4%, somewhere around there is routed through school districts. So we collect that in the levy, and then it routes over to the voucher program.
And so that's not reflected specifically anywhere on the tax bill for people to understand?
No, and there's been ideas about how to do that, but the legislature has to pass a law to do that. So at this point, it just appears as West Bend School District on your tax bill, and that includes both anything the school district is collecting as well as those voucher amounts.
So typically when the tax bill comes out, there's some kind of flyer information kind of explaining things going on with the city and whatever. Is it possible for us to include something in that?
That's something that we can definitely investigate. I don't know what their rules are about that. We did, and I mentioned, I think it might have been the last meeting or the meeting before, we are putting together something that we'll push out to through our communication tools about just how to read your tax bill. That can explain all of that, as well as some other elements like the school tax levy credit and things, different ways that taxpayers receive tax credits, tax deductions, things like that for their schools that they may not kind of realize when you just pull out that bill out of there. But we can contact the county who mails those out to see what options there are to include information about that.
Yeah, I think that would be valuable because obviously people don't understand that, I think, in general, in mass. And so I think that's important because, 13%, 12.4% is a decent amount to understand that that's not coming here, versus what they assume where they assume their tax dollars are going, so I think that's important.
Yeah, I think the other thing that people don't realize is the state doesn't actually chip in at all for those voucher schools, whereas the state will provide some funding for public schools. The state pushes that all to the local property taxpayer in its current formula.
So in theory, if you were to weight that amount, it's actually even more than 12%. If it were a weighted amount, because you're saying 100% of the voucher goes to the taxpayer.
Well, it's like a per pupil, so let me try to put it in this context. So the high school per pupil voucher amount. So if I'm a voucher student attending a private high school in Wisconsin, that amount that those schools receive, I believe, and I'm gonna do this off the top of my head, but I believe it's $13,258 per student, okay? Well, if you're a public school student, you have some state aid coming in to offset that, right? So like your average public school student might only be costing the local property taxpayer somewhere around $7,000 a student because you've got some state aid helping you with that public school cost, right? Whereas on the voucher side, the state isn't helping at all. So the local property taxpayer actually ends up paying more per student out of property taxes for a student attending a voucher school than a student attending the local public school. Again, we like our private school partners. I can't emphasize that enough. They do great work, just like we do great work. This is really just a matter of explaining the finances and how it works.
Well, the transparency should be there. I think,
Yep.
I think that transparency should be there for everyone to see what because it's not even just, that's what I'm saying, it's 12.4%, but it's actually also on top of that, just so you know, 100% of that voucher cost is passed on to taxpayers.
Correct.
So I feel like people should be aware of that.
And from that transparent perspective, I think it's also important to note that our local private schools, they don't control that either, right? Like they don't have the ability to influence that either. The only way that kind of maybe greater clarity can happen is at the legislature level.
Great, a good question. I did not catch that these costs go through. You said it's a purchase services line? That's interesting. I suppose another quirk of school accounting.
When you take those items out, we've actually reduced our purchase service costs from one year to the next.
Interesting. Other questions on the final budget recommendation for the tax levy? Any other questions? We appreciate the journey. You've kept us well informed all the way along. I would move to approve the final budget recommendation and certification of the tax levy as presented. Is there a second? Thank you, Joe. We have a motion and second on the floor to approve the final budget recommendation and certification of the tax levy as presented. Is there any final discussion? Hearing none, I'll call the motion. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? None. Thank you. The motion carries. Superintendent Wimmer, we should just reflect that Mr. Jenkins had a pre-existing conflict and that he was absent as of 6:30, and so we'll mark him absent for this vote. Thank you, Mr. Hanson. We appreciate that. That, I believe, is our only action item for tonight. This takes us to future agenda items in our board meeting calendar. So upcoming on our board meeting calendar, all these meetings scheduled to take place at the Education Service Center, Curriculum Committee meeting on November 4th at 4:30 p.m., and regular board meetings on November 10th and November 24th, both scheduled at 5:30 p.m. Again, all meetings here at the Education Service Center. And we encourage the public to look for the official postings, meeting postings, in case the date or the time or the location may have changed. Any questions on the board calendar? Next, we have items for follow-up and communication. I heard Dr. Temez's request for some discussion with regard to the potential of what can we do around clarity around the tax levy and such. Maybe we can give that some thought, Superintendent Wimmer, for the future. Are there any other items for follow-up and communication?
Just one piece that we're waiting on. We worked with the village over last week for approvals at the Plan Commission level and at the village level to move forward with the new school. However, we're just kind of working at finalizing some legal language around an agreement for that piece. So I should have an update then on that final piece. So we received all our preliminary approvals, and they know that we're kind of working on some language that way.
All right, thank you for that. Other items for follow-up and communication? All right, hearing none, we've reached the end of our planned agenda. We do have an item that's appropriate to discuss in executive session. So I'll make a motion to adjourn into executive session pursuant to Wisconsin Statute 19.851C to consider employment, promotion, compensation, or performance evaluation data of any public employee over which the governmental body has jurisdiction or exercises responsibility, and take any such action, if necessary, based on its discussion, namely compensation pertaining to base wage negotiations. Is there a second? Thank you, Kelly. We have a motion and second to adjourn into executive session. Final discussion. All right, hearing none, this requires a roll call vote, so I will call the roll. Ms. Kruger? Yes. Ms. Ergot? Yes. Mr. Jenkins is absent. Dr. Temez? Yes. Mr. Swigert votes yes. Ms. Lang? Yes. Mr. Pickler? Yes. Thank you. We are unanimous. We're adjourned to executive session. Thank you to all those who joined online or in person, and we look forward to seeing you at a future meeting. Have a good night.